Imagine this. You walk into a derelict city that once fell to bioweapons and death. But this time, the city remembers you. You don't just fight monsters, you outthink them. You don't just shoot zombies, you feel every bullet like a gamble. And every time you open a door, you're asking yourself a question. Is this fear, or is this death waiting on the other side? That's the promise of Resident Evil Requiem. Not just another survival horror, but a psychological, mechanical, and sensory evolution of the series. Today we're going to deep dive on how Requiem actually plays, what it feels like, how it's structured, and why players who live for tight mechanics and needle-sharp scares will be glued to their screens. Requiem doesn't give you one type of playstyle. You alternate between Grace Ashcroft, who is a new protagonist FBI analyst. Her gameplay revolves around stealth, survival, and fear management. She must avoid detection from a relentless monster, similar to Mr. X or Lady Dimitrescu. To survive, she crouches, sneaks, hides under objects, and can distract enemies with thrown items like glass bottles. Even light, like using a lighter, becomes a risk because it can attract the monster's attention. This is classic survival horror tension at its finest. You will also be playing as Leon S. Kennedy. He is a returning fan favorite legacy character. Leon's gameplay feels more combat oriented, but it's still very brutal. It's extremely reminiscent of the intense action pacing Resident Evil 4 perfected. He wields both firearms and melee weapons, and can even pick up enemy weapons to use against them, making encounters feel dynamic and versatile. His combat sections act as both a release and escalation from Grace's claustrophobic tension. This duality was intentional. Capcom designers have said the goal was to marry the most terrifying horror and the most thrilling action by alternating between Grace's vulnerability and Leon's seasoned combat prowess, meaning the game feels layered and unpredictable rather than one note. One of Requiem's biggest gameplay revelations is something fans have been begging for. You can switch between first-person and third-person camera at any time. This is a massive evolution. Most Resident Evil titles lock you into one perspective, but now the choice is yours. With first person, it becomes tight, tense immersion. You see only what's right in front of you. It heightens fear and makes every enemy jump out like it's behind you. And with third person, the wider situational awareness is better for combat and spatial judgment, especially in hectic enemy encounters. Both perspectives change how the game feels, giving players agency over their tension experience. Combat in Requiem isn't just button mashing. It's about impact, momentum, and consequence. Here's what previews and gameplay reports say. Leon's gunplay borrows the weight and confidence of RE4's evolved combat, but with added brutality and visceral feedback on hits and blocks. The weapons have thoughtful animations and physics that make each shot feel substantial. The melee isn't just for show either. It has purpose, and it integrates into survival choices and sometimes becomes your only option. The combat pacing intentionally oscillates between precision and panic, adding rhythm to exploration and fear. In many survival horror games, fear is only aesthetic. In Requiem, fear directly impacts gameplay. Grace's state of panic affects her movement and control responsiveness, subtly simulating fear influencing play. The monster stalking her doesn't just chase, it responds to noise and light. This turns even seemingly mundane actions like reloading or switching items into tactical decisions, because if you make a sound, you could wake something worse. This survival horror doesn't just scare you, it completely plays with your head. Resident Evil Requiem also brings back a beloved series staple, the strategic inventory and crafting systems. Test tubes and formulas are scattered throughout the environment, and they reward players who explore deeply and carefully. You can now gather blood samples from enemies, which is a new resource mechanic that lets you craft unique tools and injectors. These items aren't throwaways either. They play into combat decisions, exploration, and crisis responses. Some crafted items can even make enemies explode, which is a satisfying and emergent system that encourages experimentation. This is classic Resident Evil tension in action. You'll always be balancing risk versus reward. Requiem takes you back to a very nostalgic place, Raccoon City, a setting with history and fear built into its bones. The levels are designed to feel dense and interconnected, with shortcuts rewarding exploration, but may expose you to danger if rushed. The environmental hazards matter, with the darkness not just being aesthetic, it's actually tactical. And the encounters are layered. They loop back, they present branching choices, and they surprise you even on second runs. This isn't just a corridor shooter, it's survival, exploration, and fear wrapped into one cohesive spatial experience. So by now you should be asking yourself this one question. Is Resident Evil Requiem just a scary game, or is it a survival horror evolution? From dual protagonists that deliver contrasting yet complementary experiences, and perspective flexibility that empowers player choices, with combat that feels tactical and visceral, with fear built into movement and reaction mechanics, with resource systems that demand strategic thinking, And finally, with a city that remembers every step you take, this feels like the latest chapter in survival horror that doesn't just borrow from past Resident Evil games. It amplifies what players have always craved: fear with consequences and choice with weight. For all of you who stayed until the end, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'll catch you in the next one.